What's up, everybody? Today's date, March 31st, 2021. The trial for that cop who murdered George Floyd is happening this week. Almost a year ago, the entire country, if not the entire world, saw that video where that cop murdered George Floyd in Minnesota. So the trial is going on this week. The interesting thing about this trial is it's not that much different from other situations with the police that happened in the past. For example, back in 1991 in California, a black man named Rodney King was beaten almost to death by 4 cops. He was allegedly speeding. And then you have in 2014 in New York, a black man named Eric Garner. He was murdered by a cop because he was selling loose cigarettes. Then you got this case here in Minnesota. And what's interesting is that all those cases made national news, spread it all over the news, heard about them on the news like every day for a long time. And then you got these other cases where a cop murders an innocent person, and those trials usually don't, if there is a trial, those cases really don't get a lot of national news coverage, not as much as the ones you usually see. For instance, there were these cops who murdered a young man named Elijah McClain in Colorado. I believe that was back in 2019. Young man was walking down the street minding his own business, and these cops, I think it was 4 of them, 3 or 4, decided to harass him. They murdered him. Some of the paramedics or whatever came, injected him with something, I forgot what it's called, but whatever it was too much for his body weight. And young man died. Yeah, he was murdered. But you don't hardly hear that many people talk about that. That young man, Elijah McClain, was not doing anything wrong. But then you have these cases where a person, a black man who died at the hands of the police, they either committed a crime or allegedly committed a crime, and that's blown way out of proportion all over the news. This case with Elijah McClain should have got even more national attention. I believe the media and the people in law enforcement, they try to downplay cases like Elijah McClain because he was not doing anything wrong. And I don't believe this young man had any type of criminal history. So he was not committing any crime. He does not have any criminal history as far as I know. So there's no way the police can criminalize him. So that murder of Elijah McClain is downplayed. But then you got these other cases that are spread all over the news. Rodney King, Michael Brown, Eric Garner, George Floyd. It seems like the media would blow up those cases. The media would spread all those cases where a person was or was allegedly committing a crime. It seemed like they blow those cases out of proportion and spread them all over the news, have people talking about them, and it seems like they're trying to make it seem like the black men who were killed by the cops deserve what they got because they were committing a crime. So they deserve whatever they got. That's what I believe. You got people saying, why are these people protesting for a person who brought it on himself? And they wouldn't have been committing crime when they got killed. Well, the thing is, there are certain crimes you don't need to kill anybody, just arrest them and that's it. But this case with George Floyd is all over the world. But not that many people know a lot about the Elijah McClain case. That young man was not doing anything wrong, and they murdered him. They're trying to downplay it or cover it up. There's quite a few cases out there where a police officer murders an innocent person who was not doing anything at all, has not committed any crime whatsoever, and the police officer still killed them. There's quite a few cases like that. Along with Elijah McClain, there was a case back in 2014 in Oklahoma. A man, I think his name was Luis Rodriguez, Hispanic man, I forgot. I think that was his name, Luis Rodriguez, in Oklahoma. He was murdered by the police. Same way George Floyd was. He was smothered to death. That story did not make national news. I bet you hardly anybody even remember that case or was aware of it in the first place. Yep. So when you have these cases where a black man was murdered by police officers after those black men committed a crime or allegedly committed a crime, those events, cases, whatever, are spread all over the news, all over the country, to give the impression that, okay, yeah, these cops killed that black man, but he was committing a crime. He was doing something wrong, so he deserved what he got, or what she got, because a lot of black women get killed by cops also. You don't hear a lot about that either. But the case with Elijah McClain, and also in Ohio, late last year, a young man named Casey Goodson Jr. was murdered by a cop. He was not doing anything wrong. These cases where an innocent person was murdered by police officers and that person was not doing anything wrong, those cases should get just as much attention as the other cases where the victim of a police murder committed a crime. I mean, it doesn't matter whether you committed a crime or not. All those cases should be spread all over the news and get the equal national attention. But a lot of these cases where the victim who was murdered by a cop did not do anything wrong, those cases are really downplayed. And they're usually covered up because the police can't justify what they did when they killed an innocent person. But I'm following those stories, those cases. Elijah McClain, Casey Goodson Jr. As for this trial for this cop who murdered George Floyd, yeah, that outcome, whatever the outcome is going to be, is going to be very interesting. We'll see how that played out. But these other cases where the victims of dirty cops who decided to kill them, yeah, those cases need more exposure, more attention. Because those people, those innocent people who did not commit any crime at all, did not have to die. Like I said, as time goes by, we'll see how this all plays out. Yeah, when you're out and about somewhere, just be careful, because you could be an innocent person just out minding your own business, and you can get killed by an actual criminal or a criminal wearing a police badge. Think about that.